right, I believe that we are live. Assalamu alaikum. We are now live here at Ejaz, and I immediately see Aisha, who is our regular, giving us salam in the chat. So if you are, as you're joining, we would love for you to find your way to the chat and drop in your comments and salams. Aisha, we know from TD, she was part of our One TD Woman volunteering group. So we know her very, very well. So happy to have you here, Aisha. And Namra, welcome as well. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Zahra. Welcome. Najim, assalamu alaikum. Welcome. Wa alaikum assalam, Jawad. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes to join in as folks are grabbing their coffees and meals as we're interrupting your lunch. As you're also joining in, we'd love to hear where you're from. I think one of the last sessions we had somebody joining us in from Austria. So let's see how far in the world we can make it today. So feel free to drop in the chat as well, your salams, as well as where you're joining us from. All right. While we wait for everybody, how are you enjoying the heat, Ejaz?
You know, it's not my thing. I don't like the really bad heat and don't like the really bad cold. So my favorite seasons are the spring and the fall.
Well, you're in the right country. Those last a very long time. So that's all good. All right. Wonderful. We have some folks from Mississauga. We have Toronto is in the house, Calgary, Toronto, Whitby. Wonderful. Markham. As long as Kareem is in the house, Markham is well represented, right? Quebec City, welcome, Marwa. Assalamu alaikum. All right, and as we're settling in, I'll start a little bit on the introductions of what we're here to talk about today, and we'll let folks join in. We definitely have a few more minutes here to get started. Today's session is all about managing versus leading and moving into the management and leadership roles. This is one of those questions that I get tons of inquiries about. From folks that have, maybe worked for a while as individual contributors and are considering movement, but also folks who have been in management roles and are having a hard time figuring out how to actually advance their career, move potentially into the executive roles as well. So what does that look like? What are you really supposed to do? I can honestly tell you that this is one thing that I struggled with, that I could not understand what the management team did. Especially I didn't understand what the executive team did because I had such a little interaction with them on a day-to-day basis. So it can be kind of hard to prepare for these roles without really having a good understanding of what good looks like. And then obviously people perform at those roles very differently, which can be very confusing as to really what does the good look like. And then we'll talk a little bit about our journeys in that space. So one of the things that I would highly recommend to you is do take advantage of the chat capability. We love to hear your questions, and we are going to be bringing them into the conversation as we kind of get started. Today, we're joined by Ejaz Malik, who is a Chief Risk Officer at Aviva Canada. Ejaz and I know each other from TD days, and he's has such extensive experience that, as soon as I thought of the topic, I knew Ejaz was the one that we had to call in for this. So to learn more about the upcoming sessions, as there are a lot of things going on that Max is delivering this summer. There's tons of workshops. There's some great, new workshops that are being cooked up throughout the summer that are focused on the resumes, the interviewing skills, ongoing support around that, and whole slew variety of workshops and webinars that we have planned. So please do make sure that you're checking in on onemax.org. This session is live streamed to Instagram as well as to YouTube channel, Muslims Achieving Excellence. And then as far as the upcoming, the easiest way to know what's going on, I found Instagram is probably the best. And to engage and kind of see wide spectrum of events and sessions that you can sign up for, LinkedIn is the way to go. So we'll get started in 2 seconds. If you're not familiar with Muslims Achieving Excellence, which is MAX, what we refer to, it is a volunteering organization that looks to inspire leadership and empower change in our communities. MAX has been, in place for many, many years, and over the years, many new programs and capabilities have been enabled. There's a variety of scholarships that are available. We have a variety of professional excellence programming. I'm actually part of the MAX executive program, development program, which is fantastic. I'm absolutely loving that. And I do know that there's a board training program for executives that the sign up is, I believe, still ongoing. So lots of great things that if you are not taking advantage of this, and I would say anybody that is university level and up, you definitely should be following MAX and getting engaged and coming to the variety of events. So lots of great things there. I'd like to touch on our land acknowledgement, and with that, I always like to include a couple of references that are extremely valuable to us as Muslims to get ourselves better educated on the history of Native American countries where we live in, both Canada and US. And I know that people are can join us from throughout the world, but the history here is extremely critical, especially as we live here. We do have an accountability as Muslims to engage and support. So as Muslims living across Canada, specifically for myself here in Oakville, I acknowledge that we reside on traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, part of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat peoples. These lands have been cared for with wisdom and respect by indigenous communities for generations. In Islam, we're thought to stand for justice and honor the sacred trust of the earth, as Allah says in the Quran. Indeed, we offered the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they declined to bear it and feared it. But man undertook to bear it. Indeed, he was unjust and ignorant. This verse is from Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah 33, verse 72. This verse reminds us of the responsibility that we carry as caretakers of the earth. And in this spirit, we seek to gently walk on this land, to listen and learn from the indigenous voices, and to support truth and reconciliation with sincerity and humility. Okay, with that, I introduce you to Ejaz again, and this time a little bit on a more personal note. If you have registered for the program, obviously you would have seen an extensive bio of Ejaz, but I'd like to get a little bit more personal and have Ejaz tell us a little bit about himself from both professional and personal side.
Sure, Aida, thank you. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for taking the time to join, and investing in yourself is how these things are set up. Glad to be here and offer any insights that I can, and really look forward to any questions you might have. I think that's the best format for us to have, so that's very specific and tailored to what you're interested in. I'll tell you a bit about myself. So as Aida said, I'm currently the Chief Risk Officer for Aviva Canada. I've been in the role relatively new. It's only been about 6 months. Prior to that, I spent about 20 years at TD in various positions. In my most recent role there, I was a Vice President of Risk and Control, the 1B function for the insurance group, and have done different stints in risk, in audits, in strategy, in systems as well throughout my career there. Prior to that, I did a stint at Ford Motor Company, Sun Life Financial, and Allianz Insurance, which used to have a PNC portfolio here in Canada. So from a professional perspective, that's me. I went to U of T for an undergrad, and at Scarborough College, which is a real university, and went to York after that for an MBA in finance and marketing. So that's me professionally. Personally, I was born in Pakistan. I live in Toronto. I've been here my whole life. I've got, I don't know how we were talking about this earlier. I've got 3 beautiful girls who take up all of my time and most of my money, and hence I need the executive job. I love playing sports. Still play ball hockey. Been doing that for years, and as we speak today, I'm actually at a cottage with my family as well, taking a bit of a break from the concrete jungle that is Toronto. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Aida?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. And if you're new to the call, my name is Aida Awan. I am a volunteer for AMEX, and I support the mentorship program. This series that we've developed is in support of the ongoing development and mentorship program, and to help enhance the experience of both mentors and mentees, but also a way for us to engage with the broader community that is interested in a variety of topics. In my professional space, I work at Interac. I'm a leader of IT service management, supporting ServiceNow platform, the development and adoption. Personally, I am a mom of 2 wonderful daughters that are now both in university stage of my life, which I feel like I've also graduated from high school. I'm originally from Bosnia. I came to Canada when I was about 14 years old during the war in Bosnia, and I've pursued my education here at College for Finance and HR, and somehow through a variety of spontaneous events, I ended up in technologies. So if you ever think about, limitations around your education and where you started and where you can move, let all that go. There's really nothing to stop you from moving around and working in different industries as well as in different functions in the organization. So as we, I think I may have lost Ejaz there for a second, but I'm going to guess he'll probably rejoin. But as we kind of get started, one of the things that we would love for you to do is give us some sense of what challenges do you face in stepping into leadership roles or executing in one. So what are some of the questions that you would like us to answer that would be helpful as you're pursuing development in your career? Even if it's, potentially where maybe a management role might be something that you are not looking necessarily within a year, but potentially within next few years. What are some of those questions that you have in mind that you've been afraid to ask or not getting some clear answers? So we'd love for you to use the chat in the comments section and post some of your feedback and questions, or just the answers to this question. What we'll do is then throughout the rest of the presentation and conversation, we'll definitely look to touch on the concerns that you have and make sure that we're addressing and giving you the value out of the session. Ejaz, I see you're back.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So we're just going to wait for you for about a minute, folks that are on the line, to use a chat capability and put in your questions, anything that you have in mind that you'd like to have answered. And while you're doing that, I'll ask probably Ejaz to maybe tell us a little bit about your journey into the leadership roles and how that actually took place. What prompted you to go from an individual contributor, or inspired you to pursue some more challenging roles, I would say, at the leadership level?
Sure. No, great question. So I'll be honest, when I started out, my intention was not to climb the corporate ladder or become an executive. It wasn't sort of this well thought out plan or anything like that. You know, being Pakistani in our culture, you're told to, you know, you guys have heard this before, put your head down, work hard, and, you know, and maybe you'll get tapped to do things. Alhamdulillah, I got tapped to do a few things as I was going along, and my confidence grew because I was a very shy and insecure kid, to be quite honest, and, you know, didn't like making presentations, didn't like to be up in front of a crowd. But alhamdulillah, you know, hard work and a lot of sort of support from those around me in the workplace definitely helped. And I guess they started to recognize things I didn't even see in myself, which is really encouraging. And then, you know, as you get from level to level, you start to realize that, hey, you know, you are capable and you can learn and you can develop. And so that's how I sort of went from position to position. I was never very good at actively managing my career. And I've said this before as well in other sessions, you know, and I encourage you guys to do so. I was always, you know, pulled along to different roles rather than, hey, I'd like to aspire to be that, you know, I want to get to that level, or that's the job I want to do. I say that for two reasons. One is you may end up doing things you don't want to do, but secondly, you'd cut yourself short and your potential short by not really investing in yourself and your career and putting in the time and energy that it deserves. So I think that answers the question. Aida, was it?
No,
Yeah?
that's really good, and I love what you said there. You know, we don't necessarily. I mean, I would say the same. I don't think I ever thought, okay, I'm going to be an you know, executive. I want to be CIO or whatever. To that extent, when you're younger, right? You're dealing with insecurities. You're you know, many leaders are introverts, and I think most people that are across, you know, the organizations and even in this community, you'll recognize this amongst yourselves as you feel like you're an introvert, you're shy, and you couldn't possibly therefore function in a leadership role with that as your, you know, handicap, and it's not, and actually I would challenge that completely. You know, many leaders that we know are you know, shy. They deal with you know, the imposter syndrome. You deal with that introvert extrovert, showing up when you need to show up, and then managing yourself offline. So I would say all of the things that you were told before about things being black and white. If you're in tech, you cannot possibly do arts. If you're in arts, you're not a tech person. All of those things, I found them completely inaccurate. And the same thing goes for introverts and extroverts. And what is really required to be a leader. I feel like as we moved forward, I felt like we were more genuine because I wasn't trying to create a fake persona. I was just trying to work within what I could do as, you know, within my skill set, right? And for me, the only way that I could function is by being authentic, creating those authentic connections with my team, with people around me, with the leadership, and so on and so forth. So definitely, I love the way you pointed that out. Now, I'm loving the fact that we're seeing some questions. That's fantastic. One of the first ones on here that we'll try to address, and then we'll share a little bit of content with you guys as well, if that will be helpful, is related to work and business politics. It seems challenging as the higher you move up the ladder. What is your advice? Ejaz, you want to start with this one?
So, in transparency, I would say one of the things that held me back, it probably continues to do so to a certain degree, is I don't like the politics. I don't play the political game at work. You know, it's just, it goes against, some of it goes against the principles that we're taught growing up. And, you know, quite honestly, in some cases, it'll be a hindrance because we don't completely fit into some of the culture and some of the business politics that people do, you know, and the way they behave as leaders. That's not been who I am. I would, you know, at the end of it, I always say, you know, when eventually, you know, we get old enough and luck takes us to retirement, gives us life to get there, you want to look back and say, you know, you don't have any regrets. and sometimes playing the political game might cost some of that. So I don't do that. But the question is really how do you move up the ladder? I think to Aida's point a few minutes ago, there is room for authentic folks. There's room for people who try to do the right thing, and you know, you don't always have to play the political game to move up. And particularly, I find you get that support from your team. So your directs and the wider team that you have. And I'll give you an example. When I was at TD, I had a team of about 150 people. And what I was really most proud of, and I would say this at executive sessions, was the scores I would get from my team in terms of the type of leader that I was and how we ran and the culture that we had in our organization. And that went a long way. I thought, in helping me in my career. So, you know, I manage better down than I manage up. I try and stay away from touchy topics. You always avoid politics and religion, as you guys know. And I know, you know, the only advice I've got is don't engage in conversations which are uncomfortable for yourself. And at the end of the day, you know, you have to live with yourself. You know, the dunya is only good for, you know, as my sheikh says, only the first 100 years are hard. So let's get through it, and you got to live with yourself at the end of it.
I could not agree more. Honestly, I would say, Mahmoud, live free, don't join. When I can't tell you that the environment does not get more challenging as you move up, because that absolutely is true. But you change that environment by stepping into it. So when I am around the table, I will change the dynamic in how I choose to work with other people. So I will always make an effort to get to know every single person one-on-one and build the relationships one-on-one and figure out how do I support each of them to succeed, because that's really what our role is to lift each other up and lift each other's teams up. Now, that does not mean that every leader approaches things that way, but that's not how I operate. Even if it's somebody whose methods I don't agree with, I feel that if I work with them in a way that is most, in the end, ends up being more Islamic, I want them to see that there's another way of operating, because most people that are now in leadership roles, senior executive roles, are probably in their 50s, right? Thereabouts. So they've been taught to lead by over the past, like, maybe 30 years, by people who had a very different leadership style. And that's what they thought was okay. That's what they thought worked. But when they work with somebody that tries something different, it'll be like, oh, actually, we can be kinder to each other, and we can do this. I'll help you and you help me, and then both sides can be successful. The other thing that, again, prompted me to get into leadership role is I wanted to change things for my team. I saw that the ability of a leader to change the dynamic, the culture of how the team operates, to me, that was extremely powerful, and to remove obstacles. So if when there were leaders that weren't really doing what I felt needed to be done at that level, it was extremely frustrating. Everybody was not having a good time. So to me, that's what prompted me forward, not necessarily, okay, I want another level, I want the power, I want whatever people may be pursuing. It was more about my impact can be greater. So the more senior role that I'm in, the team that's working, under my oversight, their work lives will be better. The way we operate is going to be different. So when I work somewhere, I always feel like people should know Aida was here. And when I leave, I usually get the, oh my God, things have changed since you've been gone. Like, it's so different, right? And I think that comes from those Islamic values and how you treat somebody else. So I don't need to play every political game. I can always try to ask questions. What is the right thing here to do for the organization? And how can I help people be successful in the most ethical way? Other than that, I do not need to engage in all of the little games, the gossip, and so on and so forth. So just live free, don't join. Bonus points if you know where that's from, by the way. Okay, so Let's see. Sasha Alia Khan says, my challenge is having a voice as a Muslim female manager in mainly male-operated industry. Sometimes I feel overlooked and not taken seriously because I look different. Even how to get out of my own head. Yes. Yeah, your biggest enemy is going to be the imposter syndrome. It's not necessarily what others are saying, is what you think that they're saying. And that's going to hold you back. And I would rather, again, as a female around most tables over the past 20 years, you need to put aside what that voice is saying and thinking about how do I add value in this situation. And then when I work with others, again, I want to give them the experience of I'm here to help you be successful. How can we work in partnership, and not necessarily, I'm offside. I absolutely choose to engage with other leaders around the table, regardless of how they operate, and try to create that relationships where there's credibility. Right? You will win some, you won't win all, and that's okay. That would be the case even if you're a male, and I think Ejaz can attest to that. You won't get everybody to be a sponsor of you, or not necessarily always like the way you're operating because of whatever goes on in their heads. But I would say, do your best to raise your hand for challenges and speak to your leader about, I would like to lead something. I'm developing skills that are ABCD. Can you align me to a project that I could do on the side that gives me that visibility, communication, planning, whatever that may be, that helps you get those transferable skills. I hope that helps, Sasha, but you feel free to add additional comments in that. But Ejaz, anything that you want to add as one of the male colleagues around the table?
Well, the only thing I would add, Sasha, is that, and I don't know which organization you work for, but it's important to recognize whether the organization you work for has a culture that's going to support you as a female. Some of them are quite honestly not going to do that. So it's beating on a dead horse. And advice I've given to people, not unlike when you're working with a manager who's toxic and you're sort of stuck there, is to do something different. If the organization you're working for or with does create opportunities, is open, has a culture that promotes and allows, then absolutely, I think everything Aida said is critical to do so. Show them your capabilities. Well, go for the leadership roles. Go above and beyond. Do all that so that merit stands for itself. But also and this is a general comment, like recognize the environment under which you guys are all working to make sure it is conducive to doing the right things and getting to the right places. It's not always the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend, Sasha, find a mentor, find a female mentor that's at executive level that can help you kind of manage down the noise that your imposter syndrome will make. Every once in a while, you'll have to do that over and over again because we do trip ourselves up and can lose confidence and, depending what challenges we're facing. So definitely have your team of mentors, not just one, that you can rely on. That helps a lot. Okay, Mohammed Kareem, critical question of stepping into leadership. How should I grow within should you grow within an area of expertise, so risk or fraud management, or expand to broader capabilities of leadership in other businesses like retail and corporate functions? Ejaz, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure, I can do that. You get this question a lot, right? It depends on what the organization you're working for values. I can tell you my route was generally I came up the risk management area. It is direct, right? It when one sort of job or level fed into the next. Generally, I'd say that when you're at sort of the other lower levels in the organization, that's where you do your hop around and learn different things. But as you get to, and if I take about TD for a moment, when you start to get into like an AVP role, for example, is when I think the bank, not anymore, but the culture was that's when they start to see you as a person with a specialty in that space. And then definitely when you get to VP, you know, I'm not saying there's no exceptions, but that's, you know, if you're in technology, if you're in risk or whatever, you sort of branded yourself as an individual in that space, and that's where you can expect to grow from. So again, I think it's good to get breadth when you're in your, you know, the managers and the other levels below that. But then as you move up, I think it's important to identify what's your North Star, where do you want to play in, what space you want to be in as you move up the organization, and that's where you start to specialize so that you're managing the brand that you have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I came from finance and HR and worked there for 8 years before I started to kind of sort of move into quality assurance, which is software testing, leading testing teams. And then somehow I ended up in infrastructure. And in infrastructure, I led over 23 different teams. And it just it didn't phase me. The change was a challenge, but to me I'm still having fun. I'm still having a good time learning about every different function and technologies and how to optimize it, how to improve it. So my MO is basically looking at a team and looking, how do I transform a space? Specialization didn't matter. Being very good at assessing, leading people, building partnerships and things like that, like very transferable skills to what Ejaz was saying. It didn't matter where I'm working, you would still need those skills. So really, I would say throughout your life, you're constantly collecting skills. The more of them that you have, the better. Because that'll allow you to place yourself in different circumstances, in different roles, different organizations. But it does help. So if you're at this risk, fraud management, then that's very specific and very, very specific industries, maybe limited number of roles in the marketplace. If you're doing cybersecurity, then again, a very specific, maybe different industries, but there will be a very specific function in those organizations. So really, you're playing it out based on your interest. To me, financial security was a driving factor. I wasn't too fussy about the job because I could have fun doing any of them. Like I was not too critical on that. But now I'm more, okay, I want to specialize in service now. I want to be the SME in that space. I want to understand how to roll out AI in this space and lead organizations forward in that adoption. So that's now very specific versus from what I did before. So you can change. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to make these decisions today in university or right after university. Like there's just education. It's just skills you're collecting. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Again, you're absolutely more than welcome to add more comments or questions, and we'll build on this. We'll touch on Zahra's quickly if there's an advice there. Pursuing master's degree next year, but not sure which path to take. Work in IA testing for lending team right now. I'm guessing you'll know what that means.
I know what that means.
Okay.
I guess, Zahra, the thing to think about with masters is what is it that you want to get out of it, right? It's a big time and financial commitment. And I did my MBA way back at a time when just to have 3 letters was good after your name. But nowadays, I think, it's to be more thoughtful, specifically in terms of what is a degree going to get to me? How is it going to contribute to my overall plan, right? And then decide if it's going to be the right thing for you. If it's to be if it's to be like generally, I know back years ago, if you had an MBA, you were like, oh, that's good, because everyone had a degree and they had an MBA, so you sort of stood out a little bit. That helped, I think. I'm not sure if it's the case so much anymore. I think experience speaks a lot harder now, and counts for more. But it's got to make sense for what it is that you're trying to get to, Zahra, on the decision on the masters. That'd be my advice.
Yep. Okay. Najim's question is on transitioning from a direct leader, people manager to strategic leader. So I have some content here that I want to go through, and Ejaz is going to be opining his perspective on that as well, which leads into some of these things. So I do want to give you, this is a lot of verbiage, we're not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to give you some insight into when people are moving from different roles, whether you're an individual contributor, or actually manager and so on and so forth, are you actually ready? And are you operating at a level that makes sense for the transition? So when I'm looking at somebody and I'm building my leadership team, what am I looking for in a person? So if I have a benefit of hiring from within the organization, then I can observe how they're actually working, right? I want to see how they show up. And it's very different when it comes to like interviewing from outside. But even if I'm interviewing from outside, I will look for somebody that's in the thriving column versus, keeps relevant or status quo. So you actually have to be very transparent with yourself as to where you're at, right? Oftentimes, and I don't know about Ejaz by you, but people come to me about, oh, I can do the management role. I can, I remember even a lady that was so upset about not being a manager. And in her mind, it was about managing the day-to-day tasks. I can manage the team. I can manage what we do, give them direction and things like that. And we're completely not on the same page as to what the job should look like. What does a leader do in that space? So, as much as we try to explain, we never actually landed on the right spot. So you really need to be honest with yourself and saying, am I managing the status quo? Or is that what this looks like? So if I think about my manager, I want his job, this is what he does. I can do all of these things. Or is it, okay, now when I really want to be seen as a person that's ahead of the game, person that's kind of moving forward, okay, is that keeps relevant or is that thrives, right? It's completely different mindset. So somebody that's focused on managing tasks, deliveries, something that they're doing day in and day out, is a very different person than somebody who says, okay, I don't even know if we should be doing what we're doing. I think a year out from now, we need to be doing these things, and here's the plan to get there. Those are two very different people. And the one I'll hire is the second one, the one that's visionary, the one that's looking to transform a space and can figure out the path to get there. So to me, when you're kind of looking through some of these things, I highly recommend, it took me a while to put this together because I kept being asked, what does that meets expectations, or performs well or exceeds expectations? Like, what are those behaviors other than accomplishments? To me, this was extremely important to share, right? Because it's not just, okay, we did this, we accomplished these things, but this is actually behavior that needs to be seen continuously, and not just by me, but others as well, for them to say, yeah, that person ABCD, absolutely, I can see them thriving in this role and being capable. So any comments here, just to kind of set the stage on, there's a very different perspective on what good looks like before we even move ahead.
Yep. I can add a couple of things to that from my own practical experience, and it aligns, I think, generally what you're saying. People ask me, what is it you did to get ahead or to get noticed in an organization that you were, potentially a good leader? There's three things. It's a very simple formula that I followed. Number one, whatever job that you're doing, you're going to do that job extremely well. Table stakes. Okay, you can be a high performer in that role. If you're not, then aspirations of leadership, maybe think twice. You have to work hard, and you have to do really well in that role. Number two is what Aida is talking about now. It's on the thrives piece. I would typically take whatever role I was given and make it bigger and more than it was when I started, right? Do things differently, more efficiently, automation, taking on leadership opportunities, adding to the role so that it looked different. And this was seen. You want to be very visible about these things because, a lot of us come from a culture, we're not good at talking about ourselves. So it's important to do those things and talk about your contribution. So make the role bigger and better than it was when you got into it. And thirdly, what really helped me, I think, was doing work outside of my role. So you're talking about contributing to DEI initiatives or charitable initiatives, leading them, things like that. The amount of exposure and connections and networking you got through that sort of avenue was incredible at the bank. I was whatever manager, and I was talking to to Ray, who at the time was a senior vice president, about things, and so it was really helpful. So if you check those 3 boxes, I think at least for me at the time, it worked really well. And it's got to do again with not just being status quo, but you thrive in that role, you make it better than it is. So
yeah, excellent. Okay. Now, the other question was kind of what does each level do? So I always recommend Patty Azzarello's blogs. And it was funny because just a few weeks ago, she sent out an email with some of this that kind of helps explain the difference of what do you do at a different level, right? So we have those managerial and leadership actions at the, at the individual contributor, you're kind of focused on your business. You're just kind of participating with the team. Whereas first manager could be connecting the dots between the business strategy and your team, like making sure the team understands how they're relevant, and looking out on, for future leaders, encourage them to develop, all of that good stuff. But then as you start to now step up to the mid-level, what you'll start to see is the external involvement changes a little bit, right? So on one hand, you're kind of staying informed, you're being aware, and so on and so forth. But now you're actually more actively engaged with, representing yourself, your team, your organization, potentially in the industry, or becoming, even if you're not necessarily representing the organization, engaging through various organizations and methods so that you have that external perspective. Because you're no longer now maintaining a team. What you're trying to do is lead an organization into the future, and you have to be aware of all of those external influences. Where's in general the industry going? How are other organizations transforming? What are the influences? What are the threats in your space? How will things evolve, change? Is there something that's so radically being introduced in the industry that will completely change how your team does work? You cannot work in silo. And then as you kind of get to that more senior level, there's definitely I see more expectations to be more as she puts, a media savvy spokesperson, even though does not necessarily mean that you will be interviewed and show up at different in different venues, but at the very minimum, being able to represent your organization, where it stands, the strategy, where we're going, and how your organization contributes in the industry, and so on and so forth. That becomes extremely important. So note we have a couple of slides that are similar to this, where it goes to general manager and CEO, and obviously this deck will be shared with everybody. But I just wanted to kind of share this, that there is definitely a different expectation, and that's changing in general. Whereas it used to be just kind of do my own thing in the organization, I've noticed over the past 7 to 8 years, there's been a lot more expectations to the external involvement. Ejaz, any thoughts on how you see these things? Is that similar to what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you. I think what's here is very relevant to what's reality. I'm at a role now where I'm I sit on the board, risk committee, on the audit committee. Like, I sit on the boards, and managing that group is a whole different perspective than anything I've done before, for sure. And there's a lot of learning. And I heard what you said earlier about working with boards or managing boards as a max course. I'll probably look and sign up into that as well. So yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more there. There was, transitioning from a direct leader to a strategic leader. How do you prepare? Just a small thing I would say there. And I should have mentioned it earlier as well. Whatever your role is, if you're envisioning or aspiring to be at the next role, you have to work at that level in the current role. Now, what I mean by that is, when I would hire senior managers, I was looking for AVPs, right? I'm looking, is this person going to become an AVP, associate vice president, or is he going to be or that person going to be a great senior manager at that level? So you always want to be operating at a level above. And that's what really makes you stand out against your peers, right? So that's also something that kind of, I think worked for me in my time as well. So you live up to the next level. So you talk about, being a people manager, but you need to be a strategic thinker, or have the brand of a strategic thinker already, which I think is critical. The other thing, the challenge I had moving from a direct leader, if you will, or even an individual contributor to a people leader, was letting go. And many folks have said this, but it's tough, because when you're individual contributor, you're in there and doing this work. When you got to step back, how do you know where to focus, and what level of information do you need? I had a mentor at the bank at the time, Paul Clark, actually. I think he's the head of wealth right now, years ago. I asked him that question, and he said, what you need to do is, you can't know everything about everything, but when something goes wrong, you need to be able to deep dive on that thing. So sort of sit at the strategic level, understand what's happening, but have your eyes and ears obviously aware of what's happening. When there's concerns or issues, that's where you deep dive and you get to the details. Because I found it hard to know all about these different areas of managing, keeping it all in my head and knowing when to dive deep and when not. So I hope that helps answer part of that question.
Excellent point. I think from the strategic perspective, one of the things that we had talked about before is, in previous calls as well, is just making sure that what is it that you're spending time on. If you are constantly, reacting, or to Ejaz's point, you're getting hands-on, doing something that your team should be doing, then you're definitely not spending time being strategic, and creating issues potentially for your team, because you're not doing the job that you're supposed to be at that level, which could be representing them. It could be solving issues that they are facing in the environment. They could be partnerships that need to be built with other teams to remove the roadblocks, anything to that effect. So I would highly recommend really check where you're spending your time. And then when it comes to like working at another level, I would have always gone to my leader and said, okay, well, can I recommend goals for the rest of the team? Like even my peers, can I, just as an exercise, could I do that for you? Could I create a plan? Could I create a roadmap? Could I create strategic direction for this space? And I'll go talk to them. I'll figure out what they're doing. So I'm acting in their space. And a lot of the leaders were like, absolutely, help me out, right? They're very eager to get some help. Not too concerned about, you're there to take their job. It's just, all I'm saying is I'm just trying to learn these skills and to practice. It just makes sense that I practice in my own team and help you out that way. So I would highly recommend, like, look for that hands-on experience, but you won't find it if you're spending time doing, menial stuff that's distracting. Okay. Now there is one more thing that I just wanted to share very quickly, and it's going to be a spreadsheet that's kind of embedded. And this is kind of a view of, can you guys see the screen? Let me just see. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So a couple of things that I try to do is really look at my year ahead plan. So if you joined our previous sessions, you would have seen Aida's big plan on the page and all of that good stuff. But when I'm doing things through work, what I try to do is understand how the organization operates, how it's structured in terms of the year. When are the goals due? When are the financial plans due? When are the resource plans due, and so on and so forth. So I will kind of create a view of what I need to get done. That is kind of an annual plan that helps me get ahead, because if I see the things that I need to accomplish, then I'm going to keep that in mind and not waste my time getting into details where my team should be working. So I highly recommend, again, we are going to share this with you, and you can go to much lower level detail and change the categories based on what your organization does and how it structures its priorities. But when I think about how do I structure my year, I want the maximum achievement that every year. So how do I actually do that? If I don't keep an eye on the ball, I want to see everything that needs to get done, and then how do I make sure that I move in the right direction? So that's, again, you're a strategic thinker. You're not, okay, these are the meetings I have this week, right? It's a very different perspective in how you manage yourself, because the way you manage yourself, you need to manage a larger organization. So everything that I would have done for one team, now I have to level up and do it for two. Now I have to level up at the executive level. You're doing it for 5, 6 teams that they don't even have the same function. They're not doing the same jobs. So how do you do that now for every single team? Set the strategy, set the roadmap, and make sure that everybody's moving in unison. You're constantly looking for a way to elevate yourself and level up. And with that, hopefully you're leveling up the people that are on your team. Okay. I just, too small to read. Don't worry, Mahmoud. I will send this out to you. This is a lot anyway. It's kind of what I consider like leaders' year in action plan. But I will send this out and with the deck anyway, so you guys can peruse and see if it makes sense to you at all. But and you'll find like people have different approach in how they're approaching their year. But to me, unless I put stuff out there and I can kind of get a sense of what my year looks like, it's very difficult to keep an eye on the ball and achieve things. Okay, so I'll leave there. And there's some additional references here that we had some of the things before on political awareness and so on and so forth. And I think there's only one more question that we did not touch on yet. And that's from Marwa. How can a leader remain absent from key events, conversations, yet choose to not speak publicly on topics that conflict with Muslim values? And what are the tips to stay neutral without impacting my career? I mean, to me, I choose things to get engaged with that are DEI related, and I'm always there for the women in leadership and Indigenous community and Black Employee Network. As a leader, you really don't have capacity to be on everything anyway. So I would say pick things where you feel like you can add value as much as possible and help the organization move a needle where it makes most sense. And you'll have plenty of opportunities to engage, to network, to build your career, to add value and be seen as somebody that is extremely valuable in the organization. To add Ejaz's point, like there are things that I don't engage in that I don't see a value in. Sometimes conversational wise, it just they'll be construed as and misunderstood anyway. So to me, I focus my energy on areas where I can add the most value. Ejaz, any thoughts there? Any advice?
I would agree with you. The comment I'd make is maybe not the best answer, but you got to stick to your principles, right? I mean, this is going to get philosophical, but ultimately Allah decides your risk and where you're going to end up in an organization. If you compromise the principles He's laid out, it'll be more challenging to get there for sure. It also, I would say, I was at a session and there was a Muslim executive there that, I knew and whatever. And, they're walking around with the LBGT flag right now. I'm not there to judge. My question was this, that, when you're an executive, you have a responsibility to people that follow in your footsteps, particularly those, who are Muslims, of your culture, the rest of it. It's important that we put on, that we're good role models for that, right? So when people look up in an organization and say they see Muslim leaders supporting things which are contradictory, it's hard to understand that in your mind. So I would just say, like I said, stick to your principles. There's tons of things you can get involved with. I mean, as I said, I've also been involved in all sorts of DEI stuff, touching nothing that goes against the Islamic principles, and it's worked out well. But stick to that. And if it's not an organization that's going to value your other contributions without getting engaged in those other things, maybe it's not the organization that you want to be part of.
Yeah, and again, in speaking to the community, I would always recommend be better informed than your biases and your preconceptions. I would highly recommend that when it comes to anything that is that could be a potentially controversial topic, you do your own research. you get yourself educated, you understand how you would position your answers. I'm honestly a massive fan of Yakin Institute. I honestly feel like they help me understand, comprehend our position in a way that's kind, that is not, that I don't feel like it necessarily conflicts with Muslim values, what our perspective would be, and how to treat others. So I do think that, please, if you will speak on anything that's Islamic and Islamic values, that you do your research, that you're very well informed. Rather than potentially creating a situation for yourself where it's where you may be misrepresenting a position, or getting yourself in trouble that way. So that would be my perspective. I would just say, treat everybody with kindness. I believe everything else is up to Allah to judge. Who am I to step into his shoes? I've never been asked to, and I doubt I ever will. And I think that pretty much brings us to the end of all the questions that we got. I hope that we covered everything. If we didn't, please feel free to reach out offline. We always love to connect with friends on LinkedIn, and if there is any support that we can provide, let us know. If there is, again, as the chat is showing, there's a lot of interesting things on Max sites that you should be taking advantage of. Really special thanks to Ejaz for joining in, and honestly, he said yes so quickly that I was like, thank you. I was so happy that we were able to find time and bring him to share his wisdom, because there's a lot of wisdom to be gained. And do feel free to reach out, I hope, to Ejaz on LinkedIn if you need direction or advice. Same thing with myself or anybody else in Max. We're here to support the Muslim community and the growth, and help you out professionally as much as we can. So stay tuned for more sessions on LinkedIn and Instagram. We'll advertise as much as possible, and sometimes if you're not paying attention, you could be missing it. So Ejaz, thank you for coming, and Kareem, thank you for manning things in the background.
If I could just say one thing, guys, thanks for the opportunity, Aida, and I'll do this. I'll like anytime you need it. So I'm happy to do that. And wisdom is a strong word for what's in my head. But I will say to those on the line, when you're in an opportunity, when you're in a place of executive, whatever position you're in, whatever you can contribute, do so. Give back to this community, give back to the Muslims, because we didn't always have that growing up. And now that we've got it, we should definitely use it. Every other community does, and we should help each other up, and we should support one another, and we should enhance and contribute what we can. So that'd be just my closing remarks. Like help others just like you'd like to be helped as well.
Yeah. And share these sessions. A lot of people don't even know that they're happening. Invite your friends, even sometimes kids, right? If they're of the right age, you're welcome to bring them as well. So thank you so much for coming. Pleasure spending time with you again. And see you at the next one. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Wa alaikum salam.